What happened to the occupants of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 when it disappeared from radar on the night of March 8, 2014? What will remote viewing uncover about this mystery?
A partial bilocation where it was at night. I could see this glowing white circular orb sphere in the sky. I knew instantly that that's not the moon.
I had 3 circular objects. I had the sense of 3 cups linked to the esoteric, to tarot maybe, but it came through as a warning or a hazard. Welcome back to Magic in the Noise. Today we are doing something very exciting. A while ago, we worked a special target for Dick Allgire on MH370. David, your session was included in Dick's video for the Future Forecasters group, formerly Crypto Viewing, and you have a link to that video, so we'll put that in the description box below, yes?
Yeah, so he tasked us this. It was a blind target.
Because it seems to be quite relevant right now in the news, so we thought we'd share our results with you.
Prior to doing the session, I had worked with what's called the Gans flicker. I saw this as a visual that was fairly clear, a partial bilocation where it was at night. I could see this object in the sky that was circular, orb, sphere, whatever, that was, I believe, white. And in the foreground, I had a large structure. So I had this large structure that I was right up against, and I'm looking up into the sky. I see this glowing object. And in my session work, I knew instantly that that's not the moon, but I'm not sure. Because in some ways, when you see a satellite going across the sky, it looks like a moving star, it's like it could be that. I wrote down satellite, plane, I had a bunch of different possibilities. I wasn't comfortable locking down on it. I didn't have enough data to lock on it at that point. I did my best to try to get that information at that time frame.
I haven't taken a position on the orbs thing. I don't know if that's real footage or not yet. I'm still following that story, waiting to see what comes of it. But in one of my pages of my session, I had 3 circular objects. I couldn't quite tell what they were, and I had the sense of 3 cups because it seemed linked to the esoteric, to tarot maybe, but it came through as a warning or a hazard or an omen. I even had a sense of maybe a biohazard. And so now I think I was picking up on the 3 orbs, but I don't know. But that's there in my data, and so that's just to share with people and see what they make of it.
Interesting.
And I think that data is extremely relevant now, because they have come out with the footage of these orbs circling the plane before it disappears. And there's a lot of debate on, where this video came from and whether it's good or it's true or not, or faked or not. But everything points to this being real. And so I think now, seeing you describe a white orb that's not the moon, but maybe shares the fact that it's round and it's white and it's in the sky, to me, I see that and I'm like, you're describing the orbs, David.
Maybe. It's at that point, I didn't know. It's a possibility in there. I felt like it was probably more of a structure, but it could have been that, it was a plane with orbs. It could have just been orbs. It could have been plane. I would really have to task that as a separate remote viewing to try to understand what that was 100%. The next 2 pieces of data which correlate with the plane, that I saw compartments that were actually collapsing, and something that was either a force, I think I wrote down actually force, or an object. So I wasn't really sure if I was dealing with something that was, like a projectile, which I think Dick got. So it definitely could have been that.
I got projectile in my session, so that resonates with me.
Okay. What I saw visually was these compartments collapsing as something was driving through them, and they were just sort of buckling as this thing ripped through the center of them. And then there were other parts of my data that, through analysis and with the feedback, it was pretty clear to me that I was looking at the interior of the plane that was filling up with water, and I had that in 2 or 3 different stages of the information. You could pretty clearly see the repetition of the information.
That's an interesting data point. I was able to pick up on, like you, the gushing in of the water.
This was one of the times when I actually bilocated the bodies, and I saw a large number of bodies that were of people that were dead. And because I bilocated to them, and I wasn't expecting it. Like I was probing some stuff like, oh, here's some line stuff. Like, what is this? Are these steps or something? Like I wasn't really sure. And as I was probing it, all of a sudden it just, boom, I just went there. I saw these bodies. I became overwhelmed with fear and nausea. It was, at the time, it was like, it was just so unexpected, really overwhelming. The visual only lasted a few, I don't know, like 3 or 4 seconds. And then I recovered, pretty quickly within 10 or 15 seconds from the emotional component. But I mean, it was just like, oh, it was just crazy. To me, it was crazy. It was just like, whoa, that was weird. So I clearly saw that the passengers had perished on the plane or with the plane during that event.
Yeah, it seems that way, definitely, yeah. What's interesting, I saw the ribbing that you saw as well, as though the plane had left a mark, had landed, or it was on this hill, and I think maybe underwater. I'm not really clear on that one, but that there were people dead, and the doorway seemed really important.
Yeah, I got something similar too.
And the sense of a portal. The doorway didn't. There were 2 doorways. There was the doorway where the water's rushing through, which I'm interpreting as the door in the plane. That the passengers were really like, open the doors, we have to get out of here. Maybe, I don't know, but there's also a strong sense of a portal in the way that we talk about in kind of mystical circles. Now that I'm seeing Ashton Forbes talk about electromagnetic weaponry that can move things, teleport things, I'm wondering if that's the door, that kind of portal type door. Do you think?
I don't know. For my work, I didn't get the impression of that. I got more possibly of the door, trying to get out of the plane, or the cockpit windows, that kind of thing. I think it was, or just the concept of like being trapped and trying to get out through a gate, basically. I ended up picking up on a space-based platform framework, basically, that might be something I wrote down, not known in the public, and then it might be weaponized. But then I was like, I don't know, like maybe this is something else. Like I'm not 100% sure, but that's my initial contact with that, was that it was possibly something of that nature. When I picked up on the military vessel assessing something up in the sky that was high up, like real high up, then it made me think that this might be part of that equation. The other thing that occurred during that portion of the work is that I started to cough when I was probing. I think it was the smells and taste. I've never had that happen before, and so I thought after feedback that maybe these were the passengers on the plane that I was connecting with up in the sky. Now, when I pulled more details in on this particular piece, specifically the foreground structure ended up becoming something like an aircraft carrier. It was more of a military type large vessel is what this thing was, and I got the impression in the later stages of the remote viewing that it was actually observing this thing in the sky, and that it was assessing. So it wasn't, trying to find a missing plane or this stuff. It was more like there was some operational thing that was actually occurring, is what comes out of my session work when you look at it.
And see, that ties in really well with the research that's being done. Ashton Forbes in particular has been doing really in-depth research on this, and he's been interviewed by a lot of different YouTubers about it, because he's shown that it looks like the orbs were some kind of US military designed thing that they were testing it. And so I think that just fits so well with your data. I also keyed in on the rescue ships, and I locked in on the men on the rescue ships, the military men, kind of boisterous, a little bit rough around the edges maybe. And then for me, it was so strange because I described it as a whale. And I learned after the fact that the model of plane that disappeared, the MH370, is referred to as I think it was whales, right? That one of our other remote viewing friends told us.
Yeah, he was a pilot, so he understood the lingo, yeah.
Yeah. And so I kept seeing, and it was so weird to me because I was like, I see a whale in the sky above this mountain, and I was like, why is the whale in the sky? And this is a session I was doing for Dick Allgire at the time. It was an opportunity to maybe show him my abilities. And I just thought, Sasha, are you really going to give a session where you have a whale in the sky? Like, really? But I did, because I'm always honest with my data. So it's nice to find out that, yeah, okay, they call that model of plane whales.
And then I had a follow-up page with another person. The thing that was interesting to me is I actually labeled them as a civilian. And whenever I've had, which is rare, but it's like whenever I've had the concept of people being sick or wounded or dead in session work, I don't think about them as civilians. They're just a person that's never a civilian. So
Yeah.
I found that to be somewhat telling in that when you look at the context of the rest of my work, it does seem like there might be a military operation that was involved, and these people were considered to be civilians from the perspective of the other groups. Now, it could just be the search and rescue groups we're thinking about them as, because there's a military search and rescue that were involved.
Yeah.
So it could be as simple as, not nefarious. It could just be as simple as search and rescue were military based and they thought of them as civilians, and it's not a big deal, right? But when you look at the rest of the work, it would tend to indicate there was maybe something else that was actually occurring. Prior to doing the session, I had worked with what's called the GANS flicker. During that process, I was actually seeing a visual, in this case, full color, it's a movie, and this is an overhead view of people sitting down on two levels, and then people walking between the people that were sitting down. Since this ended up being the Malaysia flight, after I got feedback, I was like, that looked like the interior of a plane.
That's incredible as a first kind of visual contact with the target. Where did you go from there?
Then I moved into actually doing the session work, and the first visual was essentially a white, long, rectangular, tubey kind of thing with people standing in front of it in an orderly fashion. I saw this and I actually had to probe it because I was like, are these people like chaotic? Are they orderly? Are they military? Or like, what's going on? And I was able to get enough information that, to me, clearly with feedback, these were the passengers getting onto the plane itself. And then immediately after that, I got a visual that I labeled as possibly being sonar. I drew it as a radar or sonar screen. I think that might be the only time I've ever had sonar in my session work. That's such a rare thing for me. And then after that, I had a turbine. I drew it like a plane engine, like the front with the blades and everything, but I wasn't really sure 100% like, is this a part of a plane? Is it part of a power station? I really wasn't sure. But so I put turbine generator and I drew it.
I remember watching an old documentary where they had explored the use of flickering lights, and then that progressed. Nowadays, when we talk about the Ganzfeld techniques, people are usually talking about putting the white ping pong balls over your eyes, because that seems to stimulate your brain's ability to start giving you other information. Is that correct?
For the most part, yes, that's my understanding. The other thing to note is that I don't necessarily endorse this for others. I'm just telling my story essentially, but the reason for this is that it stimulates visual imagery. I was using it as a way to warm up that part of the brain so that when the remote viewing work was done, now you might be more primed when you go into your session work to just immediately have visuals, right?
I'm wondering if we picked up on the multiple theories that were generated around this event, or it's hard for me to know as a remote viewer. I'm picking up data, but not necessarily truth. So these theories have been thought about and considered and talked about and discussed. So I think all of this data is going to be shiny, and especially because I did this a year and a half ago. So my skill as a remote viewer at that point was not where it is now. Right. And so I think maybe now I would be able to separate out, like, is this what people believe? And then is this what actually happened? But at that time, it was just, this is data related to this event. And so I'm not sure what to make of it. What about you?
I think in that particular case, I had literally a day to produce the work. I had one day. If I didn't produce it, this wasn't going to happen. So, and I have a job, I'm an engineer. So I was just like, oh, geez. So I managed to squeak that one out, and I was surprised there was much relevant information in there as it was, considering the time I had to work with it. But the same thing, I was not anywhere near as advanced as I am now, and so I had limited ability because of time and skill to sort of pull out. I couldn't go and do 2 or 3 sessions, is what I'm trying to say. I didn't have time for it, so otherwise I probably would have. But yeah, you advance over time, and on some of these things, it's going to be difficult with remote viewing to actually get the information. And so you'll just have to come back under blind conditions and get retasked for certain elements that are of great interest to see if you can, pull out more data.
I think that's the important part about remote viewing, has to be blind. Otherwise, your beliefs and expectations will really disrupt the data, especially for something like this, because people do have these ideas of what they think happened. And when you're getting a smattering of data, you just want to record, here's the data, and then get it, and then get to the point where you're good enough to be able to say, now I can tell this is fanciful, or this feels like a Hollywood movie, or and then this feels real. That was wonderful. Thank you so much, David, for sharing that with us, because you did get amazing data on that target. So that was really nice. Yeah,
you did too. So thank you very much.
And I hope the audience, I hope you enjoyed this, and let us know what your theories are on the MH370, and if you see anything in our data that suggests something new to you.
Bye.
Bye.